Hey everybody, Ryan here, and I wanted to give you a little bit of baseline information that you're going to need to know as you are entering classes, as you're progressing through classes, to ensure that you're doing everything to the best of your ability and you're getting the most out of your time here at True Motion. So we have some baseline exercises that we cover when coming into our system, and those exercises are the Turkish get-up, the goblet squat, and the deadlift. And today we're going to cover progressions on how you can get, how we're going to progress yourselves to better deadlifts. Now, the deadlift is a hip hinge, and we want to basically be able to decipher the difference between what a squat and a deadlift is. Now, in a deadlift, there's some main points that we want to use to make sure that we're actually doing the deadlift. And if you don't know what a deadlift is or a hip hinge, it's just an exercise or a pattern that allows you to pick things up off the floor in a safer manner. And traditionally, we trained the hip hinge by utilizing the exercise like the deadlift. But there's a few progressions we're going to use in order to get you there safely. Now, in terms of what a hip hinge is, we want to decipher the difference between that and a squat is that in a hip hinge, your hips travel backward, okay? So what that might look like in real time is in a squat, right, your hips travel down. In a hip hinge, your hips travel back. So what you're seeing here is that the hips are the primary area that is hinging, okay? Squat, hinge. And that's how we're going to decipher the pattern, okay? Now, the next part of that is that if I'm going back, my hips are traveling back, we want to make sure that our spine is nice and neutral. One of the common errors that I see initially as people are picking things up off the ground, whether that's at home or in the gym, is they're rounding their back to do so. So when you're rounding your spine to pick something off the floor, you're not hinging from your hip. So what we see is this. Okay? That doesn't even, I hope that doesn't even look safe to you, because it doesn't feel safe at all. I feel very vulnerable when I do that. So if I'm reaching my hips back, I need to maintain a nice neutral spine. This should have a good flat back position, and this is where we want to be when we're picking things up, not here, okay? And then one of the last components of that hip hinge is that we're bracing those abs. So we're not just keeping them neutral, we're actually turning on those abs to protect our spine and brace the spine when we're picking something up, okay? And the way we do this is we have 3 cues to ensure that you're doing this the right way every single time. And the first one is T. T stands for tall and tight. So if I remember T, I should be tall and tight every single time. The next one is R. R stands for reach your hips back. So I'm staying tall and tight, and then I'm reaching my hips back. The last one is D. D stands for drive my feet through the floor. And when I get all 3 of these cues, I should have a very strong looking, strong feeling hip hinge, okay? T, R, D, okay? T, R, D, okay? And that's our hip hinge. So if we're following those cues every single time, our exercise or the way it looks and the way it feels should be the exact same each and every time, okay? Now, when we know all this, we can start following some basic progressions to ensure that you're on the right path. If you follow these progressions, you're going to hit your goals quickly, but if you're taking yourselves out of position or you're not doing them correctly, then you're setting yourself up for injury in anything that you're doing in life, whether it's picking up a pencil off the floor, picking up shoes, picking up a heavy weight, groceries, child, whatever it is, you're gonna put yourself at risk for injury. Okay. So the first progression is the stick hip hinge, and we use this as the very baseline to get people to keep and maintain a nice neutral spine. So the way I'm going to use this is 3 points of contact. It's going to be the head, T-spine, and my tailbone. They're all going to touch the stick. Put that stick on my body. I'm going to use the top hand, hold it against the back of my head, top of my hand down here. Don't grab the stick, use the top of it to push it against my low back. And so if I have all 3 points of those contact on the stick, if I round my spine, notice the bottom of the stick comes off. Okay? So if I can maintain all 3 points of contact, T, R, D. T, R, D. Okay? And if you're doing this movement correctly, you should maintain contact with all 3 points there. But if you start to hinge and you start to round your back, notice, well, that's not a good position to go in, okay? So you need to be able to earn the right to move on to the next progression. If you can't keep your back on this stick, then you have not earned the right to move to the next progression, which is the kettlebell good morning. It's just a very slightly loaded hip hinge, okay? So stick is first, own the stick, then move to the next progression. Progression 2, when we can maintain that nice neutral spine without a stick, we can start to load it. And so I'm going to grab a kettlebell or dumbbell on the lighter end, and I'm just going to hold it into my body. If I hold it lower, it's a little bit easier. If I start holding it higher, it's going to give me more resistance. So I'll start right here below my rib cage, squeeze my elbows into my body, nice neutral spine, tall and tight, reach, drive, reach, drive, reach, drive, okay? And that should look exactly the same. The pattern should look exactly the same as the stick. If we start rounding here, okay, with the kettlebell, then we have to go back to the stick. So kettlebell good morning is next. It's a great way to add load and start teaching you how to move with load on your body, okay? When we have owned the kettlebell good morning, next we can go into our kettlebell deadlift. I always start somebody with a yoga block first. It just elevates the kettlebell a little bit. Okay? So I'm going to straddle my kettlebell. Everything remains the same. The only difference is where I'm picking it up from. So I'm not holding it here anymore. Now I'm picking it here. My hamstring, glutes, abs, hips are all doing the work. I'm not lifting it with my arms. Okay? So remember, tall and tight. Reach. Grab it. Drive. Tall and tight, reach, drive, reach, drive, reach, and let go, okay? And we need to make sure that that weight stays below us, not in front of us. Because if we start going in front of us, you start putting more pressure on the back in different positions, okay? So once we've owned the yoga block variation, we can start lowering that weight. But if I have a lot of hip mobility restrictions, I love the yoga block variation to elevate that. So, same thing, tall and tight, reach, drive, reach, drive, reach, drive, and back down. Cool? So that is the kettlebell deadlift, and obviously we can start loading it more with heavier kettlebell deadlifts and double weights or whatever, but for now, your goal when coming into this system, the standards that we're looking for before we progress you is females, we want you to do a 32K, which is about 70 pounds for 10 reps, and men is about 106 pounds, 48K by 10 reps. If you can do those with great form, great technique, you are really ready to move on to other progressions, okay? So in level 1, we're gonna be practicing these deadlifts, and we're gonna then start to learn the kettlebell swing, which you should be able to do these standards really before you start doing the swing. And what does the kettlebell swing look like? I'll show you. It's just a very dynamic deadlift. And so when you're ready for this, you're ready for this. But it's not, you don't have to do this. This is just another great progression to do. So pay attention to the pattern of my body, not necessarily what everything else is doing. If you're following these progressions, this comes really easy. Follow the progressions though, own each movement at each stage, hit the standards, and you are going to be a rock star.